welcome back again to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ, the host, your host. This topic is something I was thinking about and noticed is universal with these creatures we're discussing, calling it the multiple layers of abuse that are involved, like with the narcissist or the cluster B personality disordered person. And this will hopefully put things into perspective if you happen to have dealt with such a wonderful person and are trying to make sense of it all. I've been through all of them, so I know what's going on now. And yes, I've got notes which I cannot read, but I will try. You're dealing with such a cluster B personality, you don't usually know what's going on when it's going on. That's why I mentioned in another video, I called it time lapse, because something fishy happens today, and you say something's fishy, and you're told, oh no, it's this, and then it's dropped. So you think, oh, okay, I was wrong. Well, then like 6 months later, a piece of evidence pops up which indicates that no, something did happen, and by then it's like 6 months ago. So you're like, I can't believe I knew you had done that, and you said you didn't. And so setting you up to look like a fool, because they can very easily say, oh, that's 6 months ago. Why are you still dwelling on that? Because we just now found out the truth. But that type of logic does not work with such a monster. Sorry, I got off track. It does relate, though. But back to the original topic, the multiple layers of abuse when dealing with such a cluster B narcissist, psycho, socio, whatever you want to call, narcopath. Basically, their entire relationship with you was one form of abuse or another. And a lot of times it's easy to overlook this, but thankfully there are people here who have been through it 1,000 times, so here we are to tell you. But no, first off, I'm not going to give a personal story, because frankly, the stories pretty much would all sound like the same story if I told them like an individual basis. So I figured, you know what, I'll just use a generalization, because face it, have limited options and they tend to do the very same types of sickness. So we're just going to generalize. So first off, let's just take the typical situation. And again, this is after it's all over and after you've finally pieced together at least part of it. Well, what it comes down to is this. I'm going to lay it out for you. First off, remember in the beginning stage. Well, this is my consideration of abuse number one. The first instance of the abuse is the very fact that this stranger from hell has come into your world and has systematically mimicked and copied you from the very beginning, basically, to lead you to believe that you found someone very similar to yourself. Which, of course, now you know that nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, the monster we're talking about was completely the opposite of what it claimed to be. But anyway, that's the first stage of the first layer of this abuse, because they are actually abusing you. Because I don't know if I've covered this or not, but yes, people make decisions based on the information that they know. So if you meet a new person and you are like just mentioning, oh, I've got to run off to church, well, if that other person hears that and then says, oh, I'm going to church too, yet they're an atheist, you won't know. You'll just hear, you're going to church too? Oh, some people don't like that I go to church. Oh, and that makes you lower your guard a little. But anyway, the point is that's a form of abuse, because they are pretending to be like you, even though they don't have the first clue, which comes out in situations where they claim that religious thing, and then you see them murder something, a dog or a cat or something, and you think, wait a second. You said that you went to church and believed this and that, and you murdered a dog? And that's a whole I'm sure I've covered that foolish argument you'll get then in that. I am Christian. I don't believe in murder. I only killed that dog because of old news. So anyway, that's the first layer of the abuse. Well, what typically happens, of course, these people are working overtime to outdo anyone else that may be in your line of sight. So they will be so perfect here and there, and uh, which again, this is another part of the abuse, the first part, because they're faking, they're being great, they're honoring your every wish, plus more, plus ones you didn't even know you had, and that's the first layer. Well, let's just say some time passes, and when you start to notice little discrepancies, because you probably, like I was in many cases, thinking, wow, this person's being so great, I wonder if it's real. I've seen this greatness before, and it seemed to end a different way than it began. So you start wondering, is this real or is it not? And, of course, it's impossible to avoid. Eventually, certain things pop up that just do not make sense or fit in with the picture. And this is where the second layer of abuse comes in. Because let's just say you've been with this person for the longest time. They've consistently been the great person they were at the start. But then something here or something there pops up which indicates some other story that you haven't heard yet. Well, these people don't like people that check up on others. That's why they like to go after the naive ones, which I'm not anymore, but they like to go after the naive people who think everyone out there in the world is good. And people don't deliberately hurt others. Well, that's exactly what they want as far as a target, because you're clueless and you think of the good in everybody, and so they figure they can do what they do, and then if you find out something that doesn't fit, they'll turn themselves into a victim and say, how could you suspect me of doing what you think I did, which I did do, but how could... I don't know if I can see you. And then they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're playing the game. But anyway, that's, again, abusive as well. That's the second layer, which also ties into, if you're cynical like I am or was with a few of them, and I'd see clearly what's going on, and I'd say, that means this is what's going on. That's clear. And they'd be like, oh, no, you're wrong. Well, I knew I wasn't, but again, you're dealing with this personality type who has to be right and win, so even if you did uncover it, they're not going to tell you you did. But what typically happens in these situations is they've made themselves like way up here as far as perfection, and then you, of course, know nobody's that perfect. Come on. And yet they'll still say, oh no, this is just who I am. Well, eventually it's inevitable. You will find something that doesn't work or fit with that model of being perfect. So you may start to dig at it by saying, hey, you told me you were a nice person, but you did this particular thing which would not count as a nice thing. What's the deal? Well, you start that kind of talk. What's tied to the other is that they will tell you that you're wrong completely. And remember, in the beginning, any concern you had about anything being right or wrong, they would be right there with you. But now that they've got you like in their clutches and it's more difficult for you to escape, you start to uncover fishy things. Well, they don't want to be talked to about those fishy things. And if you say, hey, wait a second, I just can't let this go, you did do this. Now, how could you think that this would work? And they get angry with you and tell you that you are wrong. You are mistaken, which is additional abuse on top of the prior abuse. Because really, let's just say it was your water bill was tripled this month. And you went to them and said, oh, my water bill's tripled. Well, the beginning narco, whatever you want to call it, in the idealization phase would be like, give me the phone, I'll tell them. Listen here, you water company, you will fix it. And they'll be like all for you. But then when this stuff later unfolds, here you are again in the same position of needing something, which this person always did, but all of a sudden now it's switched to, oh, you are mistaken. I can't believe you think that I would actually do that. What kind of person do you think I am? Because they know that a regular, nice, normal person does not want to cause pain to another. So here they go, switching into the victim role of, how could you say? And if you're gullible, you'll probably think, oh, I was just thinking maybe that was the case and just said it. I must have been wrong, but you weren't wrong. So keep that in mind. But anyway, that's two of the layers of abuse. And of course, if you're involved more and more and more with this same thing, your brain is being conditioned to think that you've found the right person, but then these things start to show up. So you don't really want to just throw it all away, but then at the same time you think, but wait, there is something off here. Because you can't help but remember the beginning stages when any tiny problem was like rescued immediately, but now when the problem's on the other person, you start to gain a new reputation because you see this and you see that and another thing and another, and it keeps adding to your theory that something isn't right. So when you come back and say, hey, now these three things, these can't go undiscussed. And when you try that, they do the same thing, which I've learned is negative energy causing you to be dragged into the manipulation, crazy making, and baiting, because what they're very good at is pretending to be normal the way they have been from the beginning, even after you find out things that are completely out of character with this creature you're looking at. And they'll continue to pretend to be the normal person, and you'll think, but wait, you can't still be that person with this existing. But they make it out like you have lost your mind, gaslighting. They make it out like you need to realize you're wrong. And so here you are, a rational human being with valid evidence and situations that are clearly out of character with the original version of the clone or whatever it was. And I don't know if it's baiting on purpose or if it's just to generate that negative energy, because face it, the abusive person knows exactly what he or she is doing. They know that they presented themselves as Mr. or Mrs. Nice Guy. So when they start switching and you catch on, they're like, you're wrong about that, you're wrong. Well, eventually what you become is a nag. Because strengthen your case on what you suspect may be going on, but your narcissistic predator or whatever is not going to be receptive to any of that at all. And here you are with valid concerns based on empirical evidence situations. Like for the first 6 months, it was always nice, 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 but then all of a sudden it's evil, and I don't want to hear any more about that. Yet you're like, but wait a second. And you know, of course, if you were discussing the neighbors and it was the same circumstances, he'd be right there with you saying, oh yeah, well that does mean that he's up to no good, yeah. But when it's him or her, they're like, oh, you're wrong. You're wrong about that. And that is abuse because you're not wrong about it. And this person knows good and well that's the case. But they will play their normal game of looking and acting normal. Another thing they'll do, I've noticed, is they like to roll their eyes like this. And they normally do it when you've gained so many pieces of evidence to substantiate your alternate viewpoint of who he or she is, really. And if you say, oh, look, wait, this here and this there and that there proves that what I said was, and they will like, oh, you are so wrong, you didn't listen to me, I told you, I only did that unchristian thing because of la la la, and I am Christian and I don't kill, but I did kill. And it's like, oh, come on. And you start to feel like you're dealing with a child. And I've come to another conclusion with that part of it, because face it, we were all children. And we all engaged, more than likely, in some kind of manipulative behavior, some kind of trying to figure out who we were, who we weren't, so we might try out this method or try out that method. But when we get to be older, we kind of like toss all that aside and finally decide who we actually really are, and it stays the same from day to day. These people never matured beyond like 9 years old, something really young. So they're still out there playing the stupid type games we did when we were really young, only to grow to think, you know what, that game I played was pretty stupid. Like, the thing is, these people have a cover because they've got their flying monkeys, which are probably your friends, your family, people you've introduced him or her to, and they've already got them brainwashed. Our brains recall those old days back when we were kids, and it's kind of like we see this other adult behaving in the ways we had done when we were kids, but you don't want to believe that because you think, come on now, this ain't no kid. But the more you see and experience, the more it really starts to seem that, well, maybe this person's stuck in childhood because he did do that one thing just because of this stupid reason, like a kid would do. But that's one of their cover strategies, because adults who have been there and are beyond it, they're familiar with it. Well, they're not experiencing it if they're not you. So when you are experiencing it and you keep seeing that this is a childlike behavior, well, you're going to sound foolish. And they've got this all set up, if they did their job right with the flying monkeys, by telling them long before you even suspect that you're unhinged, you've got a problem. They love to say, you need help, which is very common once you uncover what they really are and throw it in their face and say, this is what you are, you need help. Like, oh, thanks, so you're... The point is, you're isolated in these cases because the flying monkeys only see the best side of this creature, yet you've seen the great side and the evil side that nobody sees. And they seem to deliberately do retarded things to you that are real, and they're really being done, but they're so retarded. If you were to go to one of the other people you're friends with and say, you know what I think he's doing? I think he's doing this because, and you like talk about like a childish type reason, well, your friend is an adult too, probably thinking, oh, that's childhood. Oh, I don't think so. Especially if the narcissist has brainwashed them already to say you're unstable, they'll just be hearing you complain about the narcissist and think, oh, he was right. This one's losing it. And so they look like they're the angel on top of the tree, and you look like you're slowly losing your mind. And that's the gaslighting part, and that's the point, is to ruin your credibility. But that's what they love to do. They love to come into your life and infiltrate all your friends and family and get them all to love them, and then secretly do stuff to you. So then when you go to your peers, oh, I don't know if he's right or not, they'll be like, oh, settle down, just accept it. And it's like a reinforcing thing because they're all on board with it, and they don't know what you're going through. And if you try to tell them, you're going to sound retarded. You're going to sound like you've lost it. And that is exactly what this creature has planned. So, back in summary, they start off abusing you to begin with, and then when you catch on to them, they still abuse you further, and then when you finally call them out and say, you are lying about all this stuff, you told me, then they're even abusive more by saying, well, so what? What about the time you lied about the flavor of ice cream you ate? It was chocolate and you told me it was vanilla. And they say some crap like that, which, again, is totally off the wall, doesn't fit with anything you've experienced up to that point, and again, they're messing with your mind, and that is the goal. And they know it. They know it's going to drive you crazy. And then one last part to this is, which relates to a video I did do already called Complex Post-Traumatic Syndrome. The reason why the narcopath encounter is complex versus like if someone runs down the street, smashes you in the face, and grabs your purse and runs, well, you're going to be devastated, you're going to be shocked, but it's going to be short-lived because it's like, okay, it came, it did it, it's gone, I'm going to be mad about that, but it's not that it's good, it's just something you can tell yourself, oh, well, he's gone now, it's over with, oh, I'm safe. But with these people, it's different because it's very slow, like the drip. Information is given to you very slowly. And like I've mentioned in other videos, the time-lapse element, where you're not, like, let's just say you're on your own and this narcopathic predator approaches you and is real sweet and charming, and you think to yourself, that person's got to be kidding. That person thinks I'm going to want to be with him or her. Nice try. But you don't want to be mean, so you say, well, that's not fair, because your internal dialogue is like, well, wait a second, this person might be nice. Give it a chance. So then you may step forward. Well, what happens a lot of times with these creatures is we have our natural systems. We have our intuition that is telling us and guiding us, but we have learned that it's been wrong before, whether real or erroneously, but we know that our initial impression may not be accurate. So like in several cases with me, I'd meet somebody and hear them talk and listen to their stories, and I would think from the get-go, it's like, this person is full of crap. But then I would say inside, like, wait a second, you don't know that. You just think you know that because of that feeling you can't really define, but it's there. And I think it's there for a reason. But so I would basically say, sure, I'll see you again and again, and then get dragged into the mess, and then later, of course, look back and think, my initial impression was this person's evil, and I silenced it, and we get mad at ourselves, which is not fair because, again, we were scammed. We didn't know we were being scammed, and we'd probably do it again if someone else did the same thing. But that's how it contributes to the post-traumatic stress, is because you were like giving pieces and pieces and pieces of yourself to this person, and they've given you pieces that match yours, but more and more evidence surfaces that doesn't match yours. So you start to think, I have been duped. This person has been, and you, like I said in another video, you realize you're in a game and you're way behind in the game. You're losing, and this person's like winning. So it becomes traumatic because they know every single thing about you, and you thought you knew every single thing about him or her, but clearly later evidence has suggested otherwise. And so you're like thinking, oh my goodness, here I am giving myself away, and here's this person faking. What are they here for? What do they want? And then it's just a horrifying feeling. But remember, you were scammed. These people clearly are living some kind of nasty parasitic existence because they're really not a real person. They're just a parasite out looking for a host or several hosts to bleed and suck dry and then smash it away and find somebody new. And that must be a miserable existence. But that's all they know. One thing I've noticed as well is you can't really use your logic and reasoning to get anywhere with the cluster B type personality. In fact, after so many encounters with so many, when the next one came along, I could like call it out as it happened, but again, the other person would always say, oh, you're wrong, oh, you're mistaking me for someone else, oh, whatever gaslight they choose. But the summarization I've used on a few of them, after like recounting the entire experience from the start, because you know what happens with these people is they've done the things we just discussed previously, but once you catch on to their antics, all of a sudden you were the bad guy. You have the nerve to put them down when all you're doing is saying, hey, you told me this, but you're really that. But they won't hear that. They will just say you are insulting them, and they'll project onto you that you just want to make yourself feel better because you want to insult me. It's like, no, I'm stating you claim to be this, and you were really that. But that doesn't work with them. Even this argument doesn't work. So this is just for your own knowledge, so you know that you are actually accurate in this. But a good way to summarize it is, think about if, let's just say tomorrow, which may be happening, but let's just say the members of our government tomorrow announce, oh, we found some aliens from another country or another planet, and they're landing here. Well, there'll be like a press conference, and can you guess what kind of questions will be asked? Well, the first would be, Mr. President, are the aliens nice or are they mean? Which is a kind of retarded question, but it also is like a natural question. Think about with human beings. Like if a human being came into your area, it's like, is that person nice or mean? It's probably a variation of both. But you cannot deny it. Like in the case of your history with your cluster B, you know who the bad guy is. And I've said that to a few of them, like, you know what? If this whole thing was a movie, you would be the bad guy. And it doesn't do anything to them. They're just like sitting there thinking, probably, I know I am. But they don't react, and it's just sickening because it's true. Like the aliens are bad or they're good. Well, this person is bad. And you can't really say a person is bad or good realistically because, face it, there's a little good and bad in everybody, but I think the way to be able to qualify calling a person bad, such as the narcissist abuser, is when the majority of their antics are to cause destruction and harm. And if the majority of their antics are to create peace and happiness, well, then they'd be good. But these people are the bad guys.
Yes, we both agree. Facebook is retarded. Please stop human cloning. This is like my 10th body, and I am sick of it.